Hello and welcome to another episode of Metal Effort. My name's Nehemiah, and today we're going to be checking out this piece of metal, the Purvis Progeny. This is a collaboration between Adam and Isham. It was made by we, or at least that's what we suspect. I don't think anybody said or whatever, but it's a we. I could tell a we when I see a we. We. Let's do a size comparison. This is our Spyderco PM2, and this is our Spyderco Pair 3. This is a good medium-sized blade. It's a 3.25-inch blade with a cutting edge that's about 3.125. A really good, ideal EDC size as far as blade length goes. I really like that about the knife. We'll get a quick measurement in here. Indeed, those are the correct measurements. As far as handle area, just under 4 inches. Let's do a quick weigh-in here. Clocking in at 3.65, we'll call it. So a little bit over 1 ounce an inch, but not by much. It's definitely manageable, to say the least. All right, with that out of the way, let's get into the dent, the decent, the excellent, the nitpicks, and the terrible of this piece of metal. First off, in the decent is this blade. This is M390, which is of note considering all that goes into the knife. So he's got his little logo here, the AP, and then on the reverse we've got the M390 in a really classy spot. Keeps the blade nice and clean. Blade finish is really nice, just kind of a stone wash with satin flats. I really like this blade. The swedge is classy. It's just kind of a Warrenclyffe, sheep's cliff, I think they call them, type blade, which is just very useful for many different types of cuts. It's got enough of a slope that you should be able to pierce into the clamshell when you need to. Relatively thin behind the edge. It's not like the thickest or the thinnest. It's right in the average as far as blade thickness goes, but a nice tall grind, so it works out pretty well. I really like the blade. I can't say enough about that. As far as the clip goes, the clip is actually really nice. This is what I wish more knife makers would do. So instead of having 2 screws up here just for no reason, you just do 1 screw. So even though it's not technically deep carry, it gets really close to the top of the clip, which is nice. This is adequate. This is perfect. You could do a deep carry, like crazy. I don't need this. This is not, it's fine. I like it, but this is perfectly manageable. When you do the 2 clip design or the 2 screws, it just moves the whole ordeal further south, and it's just not as good. I like this design. You'll notice on this knife there is no lanyard hole, which is great because where are you going to put it? There's no spot for it. So don't put it on. Good job. You have the balls to make that decision. I applaud you, sir. Another good thing about the knife is the ergos. This is a really good design, and it's not the first knife that I've seen with this kind of general design. It might look familiar to you if you've owned the Civivi McKenna. These knives are surprisingly similarly shaped. You have a little humpback thing, slope, nice, thin part of the knife right behind the pivot so that your pincher grip is nice and close. These are incredibly similar knives. It's almost scary. This is a front flipper, obviously, budget Civivi brand, but these are, in the hand, they feel almost identical. Even though this is a much smaller knife, the McKenna, it's just that right size. Really something I think Elijah has kind of stumbled upon that's just a good, efficient, classic, comfortable, aesthetically pleasing design. So, good job. Ergos are nice. Another thing I'll point out is just the pivot. This helps to keep the knife from being a little bit too boring or bland. It's not proprietary. It's just normal Torx in there. But, a little bit of visual interest to break up the monotony of just another titanium frame lock flipper. I like the touch. It's good. Now let's move into the excellent. And we'll start off with the OCD because that's really where the knife shines. So, OCD, open, close, disengage for the uninitiated of you. This is where we really zoom in on the action. So not everybody cares about action as much as I do, but there are people that do, and so this is for you. Flipper tab. Flipper tab's got a really good shape to it. There's some jimping on it. I haven't slipped off off the flipper tab yet, and I think the jimping has a lot to do with it. It's pretty low profile, like it's not that much higher than this hump right here. So as far as just being exactly what you need and nothing more, this flipper tab definitely meets that. Now, detent, nice and snappy. It's not the strongest detent I've ever experienced, but it's also not weak. The blade's not falling out. It's got a really good snap to it. I'm pretty pleased with the opening. I would put this part into the excellent. As far as the disengage goes, now it's not like perfectly raised up, like I can't see it if I look at it vertically, but it's so big and open in there that it doesn't hurt. I'm not having to jam my thumb in there to get enough torque, and there's a deep enough, long enough chamfer in there that you're able to get right next to the top of the lock bar and gives you plenty of torque to disengage the knife. It's very comfortable, and you can do it over and over and over again. You're not going to have a problem, so that's good. The close is good. Now there's a little bit of a hop to get onto the detent ball to get onto the tang of the blade. This, if it had a detent ball ramp, I think this would be excellent on all three. This I'm just putting in the good. It's not a big deal to get the detent ball onto the tang of the blade. You just need to kind of push the blade down further and have your thumb just kind of stop it there. If I rest the blade where normally I could shake it past, it's just not going to do that. It's going to open back up. It's just too much of a ledge to get on there on its own. So you really just got to do a hard press, and then once it's on the tang of the blade, then it drops shut really nicely. So this is a perfect example of where like I'm a little bit annoyed by that, but most people wouldn't even notice or care. So overall, it's in the excellent, and I'm pretty happy. Next thing, I just want to talk about the design, and I kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier, comparing it to the McKenna, but it's just such a clean, simple design. Just, you know, 2 screw points to keep the knife together, not counting the pivot. It's really thin and narrow, but you still have a nice big tall grind, so it's kind of the best of both worlds. And it's, you know, relatively deep in the pocket clip. Like, just everything is so clean. There's nothing extra, and there's nothing missing, except for maybe the lanyard hole, but I see that as a positive, so yeah, I really like it. Because of that really good design, I think this just ends up being a really excellent EDC knife. It's just big enough that you're going to be able to do just about any kind of cut that you need done, and just small enough to where it's going to fit in your pocket really cleanly. It's not going to weigh you down too much. And if you want to fidget with it, you're going to be pleasantly pleased with that. So overall, as just a knife that you could have with you all the time for just about anything, it's not too scary looking. I wouldn't call it a gentleman knife per se, but most places where you need a gentleman knife to make it acceptable, this will pass off just fine. So overall, that's really good. Last excellent, and this really just kind of puts a bow on the whole thing. This is a $190 knife, and just considering that it's M390, it's so solidly put together. The action is so amazing. Like, I thought that this was like a $300 knife, which I was just kind of, you know, while I was reviewing it, was like, you know, this is really solid. I don't know if I could justify the $300. And then I looked it up, and it's $190. I'm like, okay, now I understand why everything's sold out. So yes, this is very good at that price. All the things that are going on as far as action, materials, design, blade cutting, ergos, like, it's all really, really good. Nitpicks, I have very few nitpicks here. Maybe the blade could be considered a little bit thick. You know, my favorite knives that still I would prefer over this knife are like a Spidey Chef or the Atom, just because it's such thin blade stock and it's such amazing cutter. This is like the nittiest of nitpicks. Not every single knife that you're gonna have needs to be like this razor edge, you know, slicing machine. This is, you know, truly right in the middle for a good EDC. It might not be bad to be this thick, so Next nitpick is just how difficult it is to find these things. This is just kind of, it's a victim of its own success. It's, you know, very inexpensive at $190, and so it's just gonna be hard to find them. For the terrible, I don't have anything terrible to say, obviously, so let's move into the conclusion. Conclusion is simply, if you can find one of these, get it. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. It's, you know, one of Elijah Isham's cleaner designs that I put along, you know, with the McKenna, that is just, it's distinctly his without being distinctly impractical. And that's exactly what I'm looking for out of a knife. Something that is, you know, got some style and flair to it, but is still practical above anything else. So if you like this, you'll like this. If you like this, you'll like this. That's easy to recommend those. Yeah, easy peasy. I hope this was useful to you. I'll catch you in my next video. Bye.